Well, hello and good afternoon. My name is Coach Diana, and I am here with Leslie Vernick and Company. And just trying to start the live videos. I believe we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Just checking with my support person here, who is Karen. Thankful to her today for being with us. And I want to remind you, looks like we're live. I want to remind you that this is Leslie's public Facebook page. So as we talk today and you're commenting, just know that the Facebook Live will be there permanently and your comments will be seen on screen. So just be cognizant of that. We do have a question tracker, and I will be answering questions at the end. If you have some thoughts or some things that you would like to ask, I welcome that. And I just want to just kind of check in to see who's here today. We've got someone from Belgium. I've never traveled there. I hear it's beautiful. So I want to welcome you, and I want to welcome Susie as well. Thank you for posting in the comments. And let's see who we have on Instagram. We have quite a few people on Instagram, and thank you for joining us today. It's an interesting topic, and I'm here by myself. So we're going to cover that, hopefully with a lot of interaction and dialogue from you, because I need to know what you think about when you hear this topic. How do I help him see his problem instead of blaming me? And if you've shown up today, you may have had or are currently having an experience with experiencing blame in relationship. And welcome. Welcome from the UK, Texas, and Rhode Island. So the question topic for today is, how do I help him see his problem instead of blaming me? And I'm wondering if you're experiencing a pattern of that in your relationship, not a one-off, but has that been a pattern for you in your relationship with maybe your significant other? We'll just infer that we're talking about your significant other for the purposes of today. And so if that's you, I continually get blamed and he doesn't see his role in that, just put a 1 in the chat. Whether you're on Instagram, I can't see the YouTube feed, but Karen will feed that to me. So yeah, are you experiencing a pattern? If that's you, just put a 1 in the chat where you are being blamed and there's no ownership for someone else's role or their responsibility. And maybe there is some blame on your end, which is fine. But what I'm asking about, is there a consistent pattern? I know there's always times where there's a one-off where I may not take responsibility or see the blame on my end. But if it's a pattern, we're talking about a characteristic of someone and a style of relating that can be extremely difficult and stressful. And so I wonder if I see many of you are relating to this. And so I wonder, how does that affect you? What do you notice happens to you when you're continually being blamed? What do you experience? Yeah, I see many of you. We've got Tennessee in the house as well. Woohoo. I'm in Ohio, and just saying, I was just telling my daughter we're praying and considering people that we know and people that we don't know that are all along the coast here that are experiencing the hurricane weather. There's one thing about Ohio: we have dark winters and they're long, and we usually don't get a ton of sunshine in Ohio throughout the year. We're one of the states with the least amount of sunshine, but we don't have all the horrific weather. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of those who are in that location that are experiencing that. So yeah, what do you notice is happening to you as you've been continuously blamed? And so I see Michelle saying, I feel annoyed, frustrated, I just shut down, defeat, start to question yourself, feel depression and hopelessness. This is a lot, ladies. This is serious stuff. Flat out told him not to blame me in the marriage. for the marriage being destroyed. It's his addiction and his abuse, that you're not at fault. So it sounds like Susie has set a boundary. And I'm trying to check the Instagram feed as well. So as you're weighing in, hi Janice, as you're weighing in, I'm just asking you to notice what's happening to you. And the way that you ladies are describing this, it's an emotional response, but it's also a physical response. And if you're constantly living and dwelling in that place, I always ask, what's the cost to my body? Crushed spirit. That's the cost to me emotionally, spiritually. Lots of anxiety. We're not meant to live like this. This is not okay. And to be, especially when you think about the fact that we're talking about your partner, and this is somebody that you live with, that you dwell with in the same environment, so to speak. And so imagine that you're in that all the time and you're experiencing that emotionally, physically, mentally. And I think the next thought that I have is, what have you done to try to help him see his problem? What have you already tried? You've weighed in that, yes, I relate to this. You've weighed in that I see the effect to me, and this is what's happening to me. What have you already tried to help make it different, to help create some awareness, maybe some insight for him? I'm just curious. And I'm also grieved when I'm reading the chat, and you ladies can see the chat as well, of what it costs you physiologically. And we have an Instagram follower that's saying, I developed high blood pressure. I'm losing my hair. The result is anxiety, chronic fatigue, and other symptoms of chronic fight or flight. That's badness that you're carrying and holding. Separated a second time, and it's still all my fault. So I don't know your first name, so I apologize for that. But I see that you're saying, I expressed my struggles and went to counseling with them, insisted he get a mentor and support group. I had my own. Wonderful. Trying to find help, expressing your struggles, getting support from a counselor who gets it, and insisted that he get a mentor and a support group, which is a great start. It doesn't necessarily mean that he will develop the awareness and insight, but asking for what you need is huge. Spouse goes into victim mode. That's something that he'll need to address in his work that he's doing. Oftentimes, I think we try to speak to some of these things and gain awareness, but typically, if you've been in a relationship with someone who is doing this, they may not have ears to hear what you're saying. And sometimes we've all had the experience where you may be talking with your spouse and your spouse isn't hearing you, but someone outside of the relationship can say the same thing and your spouse can hear you, or can hear that, but not you. And I've done the same thing to my spouse. So sometimes when we hear a fresh voice, we can hear things differently, or a third party. And so I see Rhonda saying, I had to get others involved, a group counselor. Susie saying, I gave him a choice to get help, to stay well, or to leave well. Nice. And so for those of you that have asked him to get some work, a mentor, a coach, a counselor, how has that turned out? Has that been helpful? Was awareness able to be developed? Did it help him to see his part when he got a third-party person to step in? I'm curious. So our Instagram follower is saying, even proof doesn't work. Encourage him to get help, but he doesn't think he needs help. That's huge. So if someone doesn't think they need help, what do you do? So far, no change. Quit after second session and said it wasn't helping. Right. right. So, wow. I think what I'm noticing from how you're interacting and what you're telling me is that you've spoken out. You've told him what he needs to do to get help. And even in situations where I don't see anyone saying it's helped, he's gaining awareness. So, what I'm noticing is there's a pattern with all of us discussing this here today that maybe he doesn't think that it's him. He's not willing to either get help, or when he does get help, it's really not making a difference. And he doesn't think he has a problem. There we go. So we're pretty stuck, aren't we? We're pretty stuck. And the next step for how do I help him see his problem instead of blaming me? You've done all the things that you can do to try to help him see his problem. And kudos to you for trying. I do think it's worth stating what you need, asking him to get help, bringing in a third person, and seeing what's possible. But when that's not possible and you're still getting the blame, what works? Yeah. And there's a clear pattern. And so there's a pattern. He's saying it's not me. I'm good with what's going on. And he's continuing to project blame. And I think the first thing, and someone in the chat, I think it was Susie who said it in the chat, setting a boundary. This is not my issue, but the boundary has to be set first with you. And I think after you've tried all the things, what you say to yourself is, it's not my job to fix it, to solve it, or to raise awareness with him any longer. Yeah. Boy, you guys are all walking with really tough. He's just not going to wait for my hard heart to soften. He's just going to wait for my hard heart to soften. And so what he's saying to you, Lindsay, is he's going to wait for you to come around and agree with his perspective on things. So I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit here, is that when this is a continual pattern, we need to step into truth and reality. And the best way to step into truth and reality is accept what you see and what you're experiencing and what you know. And for me, that sounds like he continues to blame me. He is not open to looking at his role. And so you're just telling yourself the truth of what's not happening. If it were going to happen, you've tried everything that you can possibly do. And so it's time to stop exerting your effort in that direction. Yeah. Deleth is saying he cannot see he makes wrong. He says he tried to reflect and he sees he has only reacted to my mistakes and that he is sick feeling that he is abusing me in many ways. I am always making him look bad. So I think sometimes people have a huge, strong defensive mechanism where they won't allow themselves to feel the bad feelings of their behavior. And that's a huge concern, because if we're not willing to be open with ourselves, with others, and with the Holy Spirit, how then will we be convicted of change and be in a position where we're willing to allow ourselves to step into something different along with the power and the help of the Holy Spirit? It tells me that someone like that has a closed heart. They're not willing to open up and allow God to do his work. That's a problem. So I hear Jenny saying, accepting reality is exhausting, but I put myself in this position, so it's no surprise it will take at least half a decade to be able to be independent. I think accepting reality, and I'm going to ask you ladies, give me some declarative statements that with everything that you've said here, what are some truths that you need to carry forward? He's not changing. He's not accepting his role, and he continues to project blame. What will you tell yourself that will help you step into truth? I can accept, or I am choosing to accept, that he's not changing. I'll give you one. I'm choosing to believe his behaviors. Excellent. And his behaviors are telling me what? His behaviors tell me that he only wants to blame me. He's not willing to see things differently. Grieve. Grieve is a good word. As always, when we step into acceptance, and we're also grappling with the longings of what we wish it could be and how it could be different. So letting go is a process of grieving. Letting go and telling myself, I don't know if he's ever going to change. I'm not willing to say that because everyone is redeemable in God's eyes. But I'm going to go with the evidence of what I know here today and past behavior. And his behavior has told me he blames me and he's not willing to change or see his part in this equation. Yeah. Queen Bee's got it. Work on me. I have to let go. No, he's not good for me, or this isn't good for me. You have just told me in the chat what's happening as a result of that. And so it's time to shift your focus and pivot away from trying to make this be different, whether it's the interaction, the relationship. And so when someone continues to blame you, for me, it's always information. And so for me, if I'm continuing to experience that with someone, it's just information for me. And so what I tell myself is they're not different. I'm reminding myself this is where they're at. They're still here. And so I'm going to make some choices based on that. Am I going to engage in conversation with them over this? How will I continue to exert my voice? So a couple things that you could do is notice the impact to you and get some care around that, some validation and some support from others in your arena. And I'm going to tell you, there's a whole line of women. We've got 116 online right now, just in Facebook, and we have Instagram as well. You have a community of women here who get it, who can give you some validation and support. And please know you are not alone, but what you are experiencing as a result of this must be acknowledged, because you're worth it and you are important. And if you do not, it will continue to have an impact on your well-being in all of the ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Physically is of great concern to me because you cannot carry all of this impact and still be well. So being well is recognizing, wow, I have to pay attention to what's happening to me as a result of these interactions. You are worth it. You are important and you do matter. Yeah. And so I do know, and it's hard for me to even say this because I am learning that I am a person who tries to do self-care independence. I have friends and I have family and I have loving others in my life, but my style is to try to white knuckle it myself. And so I want to tell you that you don't have to white knuckle it yourself. We're not meant to do that, that we are broken in the context of relationship and we are healed in the context of relationship. And we need a community of loving others, whether it's your church community, your friend group, or a group such as Conquer, where you can find loving, supportive women who will build you up and start to hone those skills of this feels safe. I feel welcome here. And I think one of the greatest things that I love about being in, like, I have a group of women that I hang out with that do the same type of work that I do. And they get me. They get what I do for a living, and you don't have to explain yourself to them. The same thing here. If you're dealing with someone and you're in a very difficult, destructive, or abusive relationship, you need to be around other women who are not white knuckling it alone, but can join with you to support and strengthen and encourage you. and in ways that help you move forward, that build you up, that help, that kind of promote thriving and flourishing, because you can't carry it up. You can't carry it yourself. Yeah. So I will just put up the banner so that you know if you're interested in looking at the community that we have of support. It's called Conquer, and it is a group for women only, and it is a support and educational group. And it's a journey, and it's a commitment. You can join now. We don't have the doors open all the time, and you can leave at any time. But it is a journey. So I want to encourage you. We have it paced so that you can walk through it and learn the basics, and then you can dive in deeper. But you will find support, and you will not be alone. So it's a minimal cost to do it. And so if you can afford it, time-wise, you will notice a difference in your ability to be more resilient with what's happening in your life. It is not just videos. It's so much more. In the Conquer, I'll explain it and then I'll go a little bit more to the topic. But in the Conquer support group, it's a membership group where you receive access to hundreds of videos. Some of the coaches do the videos. The majority of the videos Leslie has done. It's a compilation of her knowledge and our knowledge of her years of coaching and counseling. And you will also, what I think is so valuable is you have handouts. So you'll watch a video and you'll move through it. And the handouts are aimed and designed to help you implement these tools, this knowledge in your life. So the most important thing is not that we acquire knowledge, but that we move into change and transformation. And it's biblically based curriculum that is interwoven with a biblical worldview. But I think the value of working with Conquer is that you're with individuals and curriculum that is designed for destructive, difficult, and abusive relationships. So there's a specialty there for that. And I think most of you who are on screen come because you're experiencing some of those dynamics. Along with that, we have mentors who operate on the Facebook page. We have 2 monthly Conquer calls where we do coaching around whatever your questions are. What else do we have? I think Karen could probably answer a little bit of that in the chat. We have little circle groups around topics. The ladies get to know one another. They have meetups in their towns. Or they'll meet one another from other states and plan meetups, but it's support. It is support. And so I hope that explains everything for you. All right. So, yeah, try it. If you're going to try it, dive in. We'll onboard you. So all the coaches will be on to help you in the steps to Conquer. To give you the basic foundational tools that you need to get rolling on your journey of getting strong and learning what you need to learn, observing what you need to observe. And part of that is using your voice, knowing what a boundary is and how to walk in boundaries. But mainly, I think as I look at what y'all have said to me today, mainly it's learning how do I care for myself in a place where I'm really finding a struggle and difficulty. Yeah. And so that you're not walking alone in some of these really hard places. And maybe a part of where you need to be held up is really accepting reality and walking in truth. Maybe it's coming out of confusion, developing some clarity. Maybe it's a safety piece. And there's not just physical safety, there's emotional safety as well. So I want to just kind of dive back into the topic here about what do you do if someone continues to blame you? and they don't see their role as the issue. I think the first thing I do is I notice that they don't have eyes to see and their heart is not open. So for me, the first thing I start to do is to pray for them, that God would give them wisdom, that God would open their heart so that they might see truth. And so I believe that prayer is foundational. And that's the first thing I would do. The next thing is that if I'm continuing to get in discussions with someone, I'm not going to engage in this back and forth trying to figure out whose blame it is. I'm just not going to play that game. I'm going to step out of that dance. And some of you have talked about in the chat, he plays the victim. Well, there is a model called the Karpman's triangle. And I can put the link for that in the chat for you so you can look and read about it. But it talks about relational dynamics where there's two specific roles that kind of are interchangeable. Sometimes someone will be the perpetrator, really, and they'll demand or they'll want something their way, or it has to be my way, or you're at fault. And then they may switch to the victim. And so these two things, what I'm hearing you say in the chat, continue to get played out. Well, we call it the destructive dance. And when that's happening to you, the goal for the person who's being the perpetrator or the victim is for you to engage in a very codependent way where you come in and rescue and you make it all okay. And so what we want to do is disengage from that dance. That's about all I'll say about the Karpman's triangle, but you want to really recognize what's happening here. Like, he's blaming, so he's the persecutor. And then when I step up and I use my voice, he's becoming the victim. And if you're aware of these dynamics, you can recognize that, oh my gosh, this is the destructive dance. What do? I'm not dancing. I'm not playing. And so you just disengage in any respectful way you can. This isn't helpful. I'm not having this conversation right now. I disagree, but you don't take the bait. You don't step in to try to defend yourself. And in doing so, you can protect your emotions and the effect that it has on your body. If that's helpful for you, just say yes, helpful, and let me know in the chat. Yeah. And also knowing that you're not going to break through. Yeah, you don't take the bait. You can acknowledge the other individual's perspective. I might say something like, I see that your perception is that if I would have such and such, things would be different. And just be quiet. I call it stick and move. So you can reiterate what they're saying. That doesn't mean you're agreeing. So you're acknowledging their perspective, they're feeling heard. And then you can firmly say, I have a different perspective. I disagree. You didn't take the bait. Good for you, Michelle. I'm going to pull up just really quickly for you ladies. Karpman triangle. It's in our Conquer website for you to learn from. I'm just going to give you the Google search. Actually, it's the Bing search, and you can do some research on it yourself. But I think the most important thing that you need to know about that is I'm not dancing. You're stepping on my toes. This isn't healthy and it hurts. I'm disengaging from the dance. And so you disengage in some healthy ways. I'm going to not take the bait. I'm going to stay grounded in who I am. I'm going to tell myself, this isn't about me. This is what you do. So in other words, I don't need to defend myself. And if I feel safe and comfortable and I've not really shared my perspective, I can do that. I believe that when this happens, This is what I experience. Talk in the first person, use the word I. That can be very, very helpful. I would really avoid, in this situation, using any you statements. And so Bright Page is saying, I literally learned to switch my physical position during challenging conversations. And that is true. That's a somatic technique. And some somatic practitioners will say, stand tall, stand firm. That's a little hard for me to do. My guy is 6'4". So sometimes I'll just be goofing around and I'll stand up on 2 steps and I'll say, I just want to see you eye to eye. But that is a thing, is taking a stronger position or posture. He doesn't need my perspective because he's the only one that matters. So you acknowledge, and you're with compassionate, you drop it. So that's, Jenny, that's really you stepping into accepting the reality and the truth of what he does and what he's not willing to do. And so you don't bother. You're reserving your energy for yourself. So you could also ask some questions. If you're wanting to practice, you could ask some questions like, do you think there's a possibility for doing things differently on both of our parts? And if so, what would that look like in your mind? And I think it's good to ask curious questions, even if you know it's not going to be different, because you'll get a slice of where the other individual's mindset is at. And so for me, it's just all more information. All right. I'm just checking the chat here. And ladies, I wonder, what are some boundaries that you could set that would be a great example of staying clear of the argument and the blame? What might you say that might be setting a boundary? Let's see what I stay affectionate, but with distance. We separated, so I say, okay, I will talk to you later. There you go. Well, I might say, I'm open to having a conversation with you, but not when it's based on blame. I'm looking for solutions, not who's right or who's wrong. I know it takes 2 people, and there's always things we can do differently. I'm not willing to accept all the blame here. I'm reading what Heather says. He said, I don't know to any question. I asked that I would possibly help us talk about things. That to me kept him from being vulnerable, which is what he wanted. He was a closed person. So that's great, Heather, that you notice that he doesn't want to be vulnerable. There's no opportunity for really getting to know someone who's not willing to open up and be vulnerable with you. There we go. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I might say, I understand. I might paraphrase for him. I understand that you're feeling. Help me. Could you say more about that? I think it's a great place when someone continues to blame you is to ask curious questions, to open them up. Non-defensive, curious questions. Help me understand what you're thinking. Help me understand your perspective. But you could engage in that way without having to defend yourself. But with the topic that we have today, I just want to reiterate that how do I help him see his problem instead of blaming me? When you've engaged in these techniques of talking, asking questions, and opening up, you may end up finding it's a continuous cycle. And that's when you'll need to recognize it's time to walk away. If someone absolutely refuses to see their role and they keep pushing blame on you, that's when it's time to just say, I think we need a timeout. I'm not seeing a resolution here. And again, I would say I'd like to find a solution. Some people, and it might be your partner, the way they see things is win-lose, right or wrong. It's very black and white thinking, and it's very hard to do relationship with someone who sees things that way, because they're not approaching the relationship as a win-win. And you might use some of that language. I would like to have a win here for both of us. What might that look like for you? All right. And also recognizing any patterns of toxicity, right? And stepping out of that dance. So I'm going to go to questions now. And we have a lot of questions on our question tracker. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can either put it in the chat, or you can go to leslievernick.com/question. And Karen will put it in the chat for me. And I'm going to dialogue a little bit with you about that. But first, I'm going to go to this beautiful book. And she is saying that he will act like he sees his role. He will make promises to change. And sooner or later, when he doesn't get what he wants out of it, which is to reunite, he then shows his true colors and blames me once again. It's disappointing and disheartening, because his behavior isn't a heart change. His behavior is to get what he wants. And then he uses harsh words by saying, you're not supportive. That's manipulation. That's manipulation and demanding this to get what I want. That's not heartfelt relationship. All right. Let me just go to so I have a question that says, what is his viewpoint or complaint is perfectly, what if his viewpoint or complaint is perfectly valid? How can you tell the difference? I'm not sure what you're asking here, but we want to engage in empathy and try to understand from someone's perspective what their viewpoint is. And that's where you really do want to be a good listener. You want to reflect back what you hear them saying, but recognizing that everyone has a perspective. And very rarely is there a hard and concrete right or wrong, unless we're talking about lies, deceit, and those kinds of things. And so there may be a difference of preferences here. And that's where you can demonstrate good behavior to your partner, and you can say, I understand your complaint. This has happened to me many times, where I'll feel 100% right, and my partner will say something to me because he knows me well, and he'll point out things that I maybe I'm not even willing to acknowledge. But when he points them out, what do you do? Oh my goodness. And so that's your opportunity to say, I can see that you have a really valid point, and I'm going to consider that and look at that. And so I'm not really sure when you're saying, how can you tell the difference? You can give me some more information on that. But when someone has a valid perspective and complaint, I would acknowledge it and agree with them. And maybe there is something you can take away from that you can work on and change. There we go. I invite honest, kind critique and criticism. It's the only way that you're going to get the lens dropped from what you're seeing. Because we only see ourselves we don't see ourselves in full. And so one of the principles that we teach is we want to be open. We want to be open to wise others who see us, know us, and are kind with the feedback that we get. And the question is, what do I do with that? Well, I will consider it, and I will pray about it, and I will be mindful of what's been said, and I will work on change in that area. So it's good to receive that feedback. I think it's hard to receive feedback from someone who is angry and demeaning and critical, because you're so worried about protecting yourself that you can't hear the words. And so if you're inviting some of that from your person who is invested in blaming you, I might just hold up my hand and say, hold on a minute. I want to really hear and take in what you're saying and evaluate that, but I need it to come in a kinder tone. Or I need you to calm down a bit when you're telling me what you're thinking and feeling. And I would take notes, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little bit forgetful. And so unless I write it down, then it becomes intentional for me to really reflect on that and see what I need to do differently. And I think in those interactions, when you can ask for what you need and you're in a dialogue with someone who's invested in blaming, then you might also say, after you've taken in the information that you've been getting from this person, you might also turn around and say, are you willing to hear what it's like from my perspective on your behalf? And then wait for that invitation. And again, you can demonstrate kind words and a loving tone. And I would most definitely use the I sentences. I feel, I experience, and I usually don't even say when you do this. I'll say what I feel or I experience when this happens, and it affects me this way. That way, you're lessening the defensiveness of the other person, and it might not feel like so much of an attack. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, just looking at the time. So this is such an important topic. I'm so confused. I'm supposed to be his helpmate. I have lots of ideas to share and can see our destructive dynamic. I've tried to talk with him. He just won't listen. He gets angry, talks badly to me, yells, and then says it's all my fault we can't communicate. I have heard Leslie say to stop trying harder. I just don't know how. How do I stop the blaming? Is there anything that will help him get help for his anger? I'm just plain worn out from trying so hard. So if I'm reading and hearing you correctly, what I'm hearing is that he won't listen to anything that you have to say. And my question to you is, does he want to hear from you at all? Because it sounds to me like what you're experiencing is he's completely shutting you down and shutting you out. And if that's the case, there's not a whole lot you can do to change his heart in that. The truth is, he doesn't want to hear from me. He's running the ship, and he just wants me to get in line and follow along. But if that's not the case, and you do have lots of ideas to share, I would ask you, how are you approaching him? When are you approaching him? And with what tone are you approaching? So we have the 3 T's, timing, tact, and tone. Is the timing right for us to have a conversation? Am I speaking with tact? So I'm lessening the defensiveness. I'm seeking to inspire and encourage and partner with this person. And then tone. I don't know about you ladies, but I'm getting real here. And a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, sometimes when I have 2 tones, I can be very soft, and then my other tone can be very strong and firm, which comes across, I think, can be overwhelming and overbearing, just because of, I don't know, the intensity of, maybe when I'm passionate about something, I can come across with intensity, and sometimes, and in some circumstances, that can't be well received. And so I have to watch my intensity or my passion and soften it a bit so that the other person doesn't feel like it's coming at them too strongly. So it's timing, tact, and tone. And I see someone's put a connection to YouTube. Thank you, Jeanette. So, and I might just say to him, I might just invite him to calm and to just say, I'd like to have a conversation, but my experience has been that you get angry when I share what I'm thinking. What's that about? Can we change that dynamic? So talk about what's happening rather than trying to get through, and see what's possible there. And again, there's many things that can help him with his anger. I have an old book that I used to use. It's called Men in Anger. You have to get it at secondary sites, because I don't even know if it's being published again. But yeah, there's a lot of help. My question is he willing to get help? And our topic is, how do I help him see his problem? And a part of that might be, I'm not willing to have this conversation with you again. We're not able to talk without you getting angry and yelling at me, and that doesn't work for me. I need you to look at that. All right. Just checking the chat here. And yes, Kathy's saying the Bible says to bring someone else. Be careful who you bring into that conversation, though. Bring someone into that conversation who will recognize and let you have a voice, and who will be supportive and neutral for both of you. All right. How do I continue my daily living with a husband that shuns and gives me the silent treatment for days or weeks at a time? It is usually over something like my tone or something that has made him angry. We've married for 25 years. Oops, just floated down my page, sorry. And we have 3 kids. This has happened all through our marriage. I've usually been able to pull him out of it and force him to talk with me, because being hurt too much now. But now I'm tired and I just let him ignore me, and I try to live my life. I don't plan events or ask people to come over because I never know what mood he'll be in, if he'll be speaking with me. Thank you so much for your time. I consider the silent treatment kind of a sulking behavior. It's his way, of nonverbal way of saying, I don't want to engage with you. And so I accept that. I would accept that you're not willing to engage with me. And that means that I'm free to go do my own life. We talked about this a little bit last night. Susan and I did. I usually tell my women to try to reframe the silent treatment, and rather than take it in as hurt, because it can be hurtful. It can be a punishing behavior from someone, or it can just be that they don't know how to. It can be other things going on their part that we don't know, if someone's not willing to engage and work it through. But I just accept that as, that's time for me to just go do life and do what I need to do. If it's meant as a punishing behavior, I say reframe it and take it as a mini vacation. I don't have to be around you with your moods. You're difficult. It has an impact to me. And when you give me the silent treatment, I'm going to just set a boundary. I'm going to let you go do whatever you need to do. Sometimes I look at it as kind of a temper tantrum. And we know the best thing to do with toddlers when they're having a temper tantrum is to just let them be and let them work it through themselves. And so that's where you get to turn around and just let go of that and do something that nourishes and validates and builds you up. The other thing I would tell you is I would encourage you, and I'm asking you, why? How would it be different for you if you did plan events and asked people to come over and just did you, and let him do what he does? I know it may be uncomfortable for you, but does his behavior reflect poorly on you, or does his behavior reflect poorly on him? And I would make that distinction and separation. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. And I have just a few minutes left here. So, this question is same as the person talking about finding a coach or a therapist. We're separated from the second time, and I think now he's doing this just to come back home. Is this a love bombing tactic? Not sure he really gets it. It can be. I'm not sure what you're saying he's doing, that he's talking about wanting to find a coach and a therapist. I think you know your person, and this is where I think we need to trust our gut and look at patterns of behavior. Does he have a pattern of doing this and then getting what he wants? And then when I'm back in the equation, he's only good for a short period of time, and then the old behavior starts again. It can be a pattern cycle of relating to you. And so use your intuition and your judgment and history to figure that out. I don't know for certain if that's his intention, but this is a very common pattern in these types of relationships. And it can be so confusing and feel so authentic and real. And I think a part of that is we really hope for that change. But the only way for you to know for sure if he's really getting it is if he's willing to acknowledge his part of his role, if he's willing to work on those behaviors. And I think like a big part of that is remorse and repentance. And you would think that when someone is remorseful and repentant, they really want to know from you the harm that they've done. They're seeking you out, like you, not just a result, like I want to be back in the home or I want sex. They're wanting to get inside your heart and your mind and love you well. For me, that's the greatest yardstick to authentic change. And then again, because we're looking for external validation, I think a lot of times we don't really know, we're not paying attention to our inner self. And so I would invite you to wherever you're at and whomever you're at. Like if you have an interaction with your friends, did I feel comfortable? Did I feel welcome? Did I feel safe? Did I feel heard? Your body knows that. And that's a part of your sensing that I think we shut down sometimes in survival mode. So we have to come awake to that. And so just paying attention, like, how was that for me? Did I enjoy that? Or was there just a huge part of me saying, this isn't good? And so listening to that. Thanks, Karen. She's putting out there. Again, I want to invite you. Part of what we're doing at this point in our ministry is inviting you to our group. We only do that twice a year. And so we have a special process for bringing everybody on board. And if you're thinking about it, this would be a good time to do it because we'll help you get in and get activated on your journey to growth and change. Let's see. How do I stop trying to be in control of my life when it's so out of control? I don't think you stop trying to be out of control of your life, but I think we yield control and power over to the Holy Spirit and God. If your life is out of control, I would engage in a process. If your life is out of control, identify what's out of control and the steps forward. Now that's a big question. And I think that might really, I would encourage you to invite a walk with someone else in that, whether it's a coach or a counselor. And I also think a big part of that in you discovering that might be some engagement in just some of the tools that we have. I think you might need some help with that, to be honest. Just defining what's out of control and what's within my power. So the first thing I would say with that is, if you're not going to join Conquer, and if you're not going to hire someone to walk with you in that, I would just search, we have a lot of videos. I would search for boundaries, and I would ask myself, where am I not setting boundaries? What am I not taking responsibility for that I need to? And we do a big piece of this in our Walking Core Strength course. We have that twice a year too. But if I'm feeling out of control, what am I trying to control that I have no power over? And what am I letting go of control of that I can really exercise some change in? And that might start with my emotions, what I'm taking responsibility for in terms of changing someone that I really cannot. Yeah. All right. So we're doing okay with time. I want to, again, I want to tell you that it's Friday, yay Friday. And we are having another Facebook Live. I think it's the last one that we'll be doing, inviting you. I'm pretty sure it's the last one that we're doing. Don't quote me on that, but it's Monday and it'll be 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And Coach Susan and I will be talking about our boundaries, the same as letting go. Hoping that these topics are really helpful for you. And I want to invite you now. To let me know in the chat what's been helpful for you today. Let's just do a recap. What are you taking away that you heard that you're going to walk with mindfully that is maybe life-giving for you, or a reminder of what you need to anchor in? And it's our goal to love you and to serve you well and to provide support and for your transformation. There's a lot of things that we cannot control externally, but there's so much we can do to build one another up, to walk with one another, to support and encourage one another. And that's why we're here. And we're here for you and with you. And I want to thank you for all your feedback. I'm still inviting it into the chat even after I have to go. So hopefully you're in a place where you're not experiencing some of the severe weather. And if you are, our prayers are with you. And so I just want to thank you, ladies, for your presence, for your openness, your willingness to engage with me, with one another, and for your vulnerability. All right. And we're going to say goodbye to our Instagram friends. There we go. And I just want to say have a nice weekend. God bless you.